Let's start winding down conversations and finding your seats, if you would, please. Well, my role here is just to convene us, to get us back together. I'll be here in the room. I don't think you need me, but this is the movement. We wanted to bring to you the work that's been done, the thinking, the prayer, the discernment behind kind of next steps. And this is actually a little bit of a twist to my way of thinking. I thought we were just going to be going from one pastor to the next, which is what we've been doing for the last 3 years. But what you're going to hear is that there's a next step beyond my departure. And so I'm going to introduce Randy Butler. He's a retired Presbyterian pastor, and he's one of our parish associates. He led this discernment team, so he's going to walk you through what they did and the recommendation they came up with. And then Ron Turner, one of our elders for strategic planning, or he is our elder for strategic, but he's on our session, is going to talk about next steps in the process. And then Walt Seidel was in the house. He's around some. Walt is our elder for personnel, and he's going to give you some of the other details that might arise in your interrogation. I don't think we've got people online, right? No one's online, but I'm assuming that there will be some questions in the house, and it would be helpful so that everyone can hear the questions if you would just, raise your hand, stand up, and use the microphone. I'll hand you the mic so that everyone is able to hear. Okay? All right, here's Randy.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Eric. So we're in a kind of transition, of course, that Elizabeth spoke so beautifully about this morning. And the session had done some good work in terms of how to move us through this transition, and called together a pastoral discernment team to do the discernment work of what was next and how we might go about what was next. We received from the session the assumptions and decisions that we would be moving toward calling a new pastor in some form or another. And so our team supported that idea, given that the work is there for another pastor, given that we've had two pastors now for, I think, almost 3 years. We felt that, and the session felt that we can continue that kind of process, continue that kind of partnership in ministry. And so we took that decision, supported that decision, and then moved through the process and discernment of how we might best go about finding that kind of a person. So we did this work over the period of a couple months. We had some great people. Nate McCloskey's on our team. Chris Morgan was on our team. Lauren Taylor, Kathy Storm. We really did some great work. They are a great team. If you ever want some good people on your team in this church, those are the names you want. So we were asked to prayerfully consider several things. First, to identify the needs, desires, and dreams for Colbert in this next season as a worshiping community. And so we took all the congregational feedback that we've had over the years, starting with the mission study that was done when we called Pastor Heather. A lot of extensive work done to identify who we were as a congregation during that process, as back in 2022. We also had meetings and gatherings in February 24, February 25, congregational meetings, conversations held in as recently as February and March of this year to gather as much information as we could, to get as much feedback as we could get in order to report back to you. And we received just a really valuable information from all of you through all these different ways. So you all helped us understand that what we were looking for these are desired pastoral traits and skills. And this is what we all heard. That we want inclusive and that we want someone who's inclusive and effective at building community, relating with people of all ages. The conversations here are focused on the high priority placed on intergenerational ministry at Colbert. We want someone who's vulnerable and committed to pastoral care. There's a strong desire here to find someone who relates well and easily with others, someone who's very relational, who shows genuine concern for individuals, who is gentle in spirit. The hope is that we find, this was really important, the hope is that we will find a person who fits the personality of Colbert, which we kind of defined as democratic, humble, and egalitarian. Thoughtful and effective as a preacher, deep appreciation is expressed for Colbert's tradition of biblically based, theologically informed preaching, as well as a desire to see that tradition to continue. So those were some of the general feelings, and we'll spell that out a little bit more in what kind of a profile we sort of developed for what this person might be and look like and bring to us. Regarding the hiring process, we felt that it was important that we support a hiring process that is thorough and thoughtful. In other words, let's take our time. That was really important to us, and because I think we heard that it was important to all of you. Then we had some feedback regarding the transitional period. There was a preference during this transitional period after Eric's departure and until we call a new pastor or bring somebody new in, that there was a preference for reliance on internal resources, parish associates. We have several great parish associates in our congregation, and the preference was for tapping those resources. And making sure that we use those gifted people in our midst. We are really fortunate to have what we kind of call a deep bench here at Colbert. And we have a really talented and gifted people here. So that's kind of what we felt was important, and because what you felt was important, rather than employing an external interim pastor from outside the congregation. That there was also some concern about providing sufficient support for Heather during the transitional period so that she's not overburdened. So we then we were asked to determine a list of qualifications, personality traits, and giftedness to look for in our next pastor. Personality traits that you all kind of gave to us and that we gathered together were these: humble, authentic, approachable, vulnerable, emotionally and spiritually grounded. Thoughtful, prayerful combination of head and heart in life and ministry. Gifts and skills. Delivers warm-hearted, relatable, biblically grounded, and theologically informed sermons. You go through these, you start thinking that you're, defining Jesus as the next pastor, but you got to do some of this. Practices sensitive pastoral care with a listening, attentive heart, places high value on collaboration, and works effectively with a team, is socially comfortable and engaging, with an ability to relate to and enjoy all generations within the church. Can serve as a welcoming presence, inviting people into the community and ministries of the church, is aware of the social, cultural, political issues in our world and community, with a sensitivity to our diversity and variety of political positions. Qualifications: Master of Divinity degree or equivalent, ordained or ordainable in the PCUSA, ordainable meaning somebody's kind of toward the end of the process and ready to be ordained. And we said 5 years experience is desired. And so then we went to discerning the first steps toward a hiring process. And we spent a lot of time on this because essentially there are two ways in our polity, in our system, to move on something like this. The first would be a very formal process, a called and installed process. We form a pastor nominating committee. And the pastor nominating committee then brings a candidate before us, and we vote. So we felt that it was important that the congregation have voice and vote on who formed that committee, that PNC, and of course on who our candidate would be, who our additional pastor would be. The congregation votes in that way. The congregation votes on both the committee and on the pastor. The second way of going about it is more informal kind of process, is a contract or a kind of covenant with an individual that is hired by the session. So in that scenario, the congregation does not vote on the candidate. The session simply hires someone, and we go to work. And that is a temporary position, renewable after 1 or 3 years. So it's a contract kind of basis versus a called and installed basis. Called and installed by the presbytery, by the vote of the congregation on the one hand, hired by the session on the other hand. You hear the distinction? So after debating those pros and cons of those two paths, we recommended that we follow the more formal process, the process of finding somebody and doing the called and installed path. Because we felt that it emphasizes for the congregation the partnership and the full pastoral partnership of that person with another pastor. So we felt that that was important. It elevates the position to go through the formal process, called and installed. And we felt again that the congregation would be active participants, again, have voice and vote in the forming of a committee and in the calling of a new staff person. Really important that we all as a congregation have input on this. There's a sense that there's a fit then between what the Book of Order describes as these various positions and what we're looking for. We're not just looking for the temporary covenant or contract is usually used most often with temporary pastors, transitional interim pastors. We're not looking for that really. So we want somebody who's going to be around for a while. And so we felt that the Book of Order kind of spelled out the best way to go for us too, the Presbyterian Book of Order. This would be the PNC process would be a little slower, a little more deliberate, thoughtful, prayerful, thorough, and we said yes to all that. We really thought, because we heard from you, that that's the way we want to proceed. But again, we want to take our time. And we also felt it's possible, nothing sure on this, that a pastoral candidate would be drawn more to an installed role rather than a temporary role. Although it's a part-time position, and who knows, a lot of things can happen, but no guarantees. But we felt that way about it. And then our last charge was to make contributions to the conversation regarding the transition period between Eric's departure and the hiring of a new pastor, with attention given to how we support Heather and the ministry of the church, which we've made some moves on that too. Session has made some decisions on that too. That's kind of what we did and how we went about it. The session has already acted on this and accepted these recommendations. We were just a committee. We made recommendations to the session, The session has already acted on this and basically approved these recommendations. So yes, where does that leave us? What kind of questions do we have at this point? Wow. Oh, there we go. Dick.
Oh, okay. I sure. Um, I do see, a lot of, other churches, with lots of cars, and I really value the people and the gospel that we have here. But I just really wonder what our kind of goals and strategies are going forward. Bigger is not necessarily better, but it does enable us to, have a, second half-time pastor or even a second full-time pastor. I just wonder kind of where we're trying to head as a congregation in terms of building the church up and, that type of thing, and how that entered into it.
That, of course, is a great question, Dick, and not mine to answer necessarily, sorry. Not trying to skirt the issue, but as a pastor, I'm not a member of the session. It's really the session who's doing the good work of planning strategically about our future and discerning where God's taking us next. Any members of session want to address that, Ron? Want to answer that or respond to that?
That probably would be a perfect assignment for the strategic, I have to always check and get it right, Strategic Outlook Committee, whose charge is to brainstorm methodically, be fact-based, but always open to the Spirit's leading, the politics that's developing around us in real time, the demographics of our territory and all of that. So that would probably be the most appropriate place where that kind of thinking goes on seriously, proactively.
Lori.
I was curious about how you would form questions for an interview to get a Jesus and Eric type person to be here.
Good grouping.
We often get confused.
Thank you, Lord. Those questions, that's important too. Those questions will be formed by the pastor nominating committee. Yeah, but I think you could talk to the pastor nominating committee and say, hey, this is the kind of question I really want to be able to ask. So I would say forward those questions, get those questions to that PNC. The PNC, it will be formed probably in the next few months, Ron. The pastor nominating committee will be pulling together in the next few months. Yeah, something sooner? Yeah. So the PNC will be formed pretty soon here, and you'll have a chance to elect that pastor nominating committee. That's the time to let them know, here's the kind of questions we'll have for another candidate, for a candidate. Yes?
Would this come out of like other Presbyterian churches nationwide, potentially?
Well, what the pastor nominating committee would do is circulate, list the position, and then it would circulate nationally. Yeah, and that would mean that other candidates might come from other Presbyterian churches nationwide. Yeah, we want to do it as broad a search as we can. Cookie?
This is just my opinion, but when I was teaching, it was the whole school that made the community. And I think that's what we should do to make the community. I'll give you an example. There was a lady out in the parking lot that Karen Hansen didn't know. So she went up to her and invited her in. The next time she saw her in the parking lot, she invited her in again. And all of us said, well, who are you? What's your name? And we found out she was a widow. She's a twin. She loved us. She had been to 3 other churches, and she picked this one because we welcomed her and made a community. So I think that's important too.
Yes, the importance of Colbert as a community has been, that point's been made many times, and thank you once again for saying that, yeah. Great community, great church. There was, see, Doug, did you have a question? A timeline or a date to have somebody new start? No. I mean, the hope, I think, would be a year or so at the most. Don't quote me on that, but that's the hope. Well, the pastor nominating committee is coming together. That they have to be nominated and then elected. So there is kind of a process we have to go through. It will take a while, but the general intent has been, I think, to take our time. I don't know.
Well, we all need you.
Mine is a quick question. Do you have, I heard there's not a goal for when to hire. Do you have a timeline that for publishing a profile to the national and is there
So when would we list the position with the profile? Again, the pastor nominating committee will get together, do all that. What they'll do is complete a profile, a resume of the church. We used to call it a church information form. I think it's something new now. They changed the designations. Yeah. But anyway, so that profile will probably, I would think that profile will be listed. We'll list the position within 6 months or maybe less. There's the hope that we don't have to do what takes often so much time. We may not have to do the mission study piece, which has been done so as recently as 2022. So that often takes some time. So we could move the process past that pretty quickly. Yeah. Yes, Rick.
Could you talk us through the next steps here, or is that Ron's job? Or
Yeah, maybe we're there to do that. Let me just fill in two little gaps, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ron because he does have the next steps, and then Walt will fill those in as well. So I think a couple of things to just keep in mind that haven't really been explicitly addressed. Number one, regarding the question of this has been a one-pastor church for a lot of years. Why now two? Well, part of that is we're one of the few growing congregations in this presbytery. And secondly, Pastor Heather has indicated she really doesn't want to do this by herself. She's a very collegial kind of person by personality and disposition. And I think we've experienced over the last 3 years some real benefits to having two pastors. There's been kind of a balancing and a rounding out and a kind of an iron sharpens iron experience. It's actually been delightful for me personally, and it's one of the grief points for me, like, oh, I didn't realize how alone I was. It's so nice to have a colleague. The second thing, in addition to just that two-pastor model, is what happens between July 1st, when you kick me to the curb, and the arrival of this new half-time pastor. And the answer is the session has contracted with Randy to be what we call a lead parish associate. We have 6 or 7 pastors among us who the session has designated as parish associates. And so during this in-between, kind of as a stopgap kind of way of filling the pastoral needs, Randy will oversee that group of other pastors. We're going to pay him because it is some real work, but he's going to coordinate their work in terms of the preaching and pastoral care, some administration to come alongside Heather during that time. Does that make sense? Okay. Are we ready to go to Ron, or do you have other questions that are, Doug? Yeah, so let's go to the next step process, and then that question may get answered. If not, let's come back to it.
This is going to be annoying to you, I think, because I want to back the wagon up just a moment and explain some missing pieces that aren't called out, I don't think, clearly enough in this whole process. So all I want to do is to underscore and over-explain and over-clarify, if that's necessary, who the players are, who's on first, where the players are, and who's who. On the back of our bulletin every Sunday, you see the Colbert leadership consisting of elders and deacons, and of course the staff. I need to explain to you and come clean with you that my name is listed as elder for strategic outlook. What is not explained is that I am right now speaking to you not as the chair of the Strategic Outlook Committee, but as the chair of the church nominating committee. So we really are, you've heard it now, but this is to clarify that there is a church nominating committee of which I am chair, and which consists of committee members that are entirely different from the committee membership of the Strategic Outlook Committee. So there is a church nominating committee that does stuff. The first thing that the former church nominating committee did before I came on session, in November of 2025, the church nominating committee came to the congregation and presented a slate of elders and deacons, and I was on that slate, and the new elders and deacons then were installed in February, I believe. But the point is that the congregation approved that slate. Now I want to stop with, to interject a 30-second discussion of biblical precedents here. We did not invent this process of nomination. In Acts 6, the apostles, for the first time, were confronted with a problem. There was some heavy lifting to be done to take care of widows in the church. That was a serious, time-consuming, critical task for the church. And the apostles said, we can't handle this alone. And then, if you read very, very carefully, and I think I've got the language right here, there's an imperative where the apostles, listen carefully, the apostles went to the congregation and said, you pick some people that can take care of this. So we have precedent for a nominating committee in chapter 6 of Acts, and we're following precisely that model here, where we are pushing the final burden of approval and decision back to the congregation. I want you to be really clear on that. In February, at a congregational meeting, you all approved the membership, the constituency for the church nominating committee, my other committee. And that was a congregational decision. What's happening next is that the church nominating committee is now meeting twice a week, if last week is any indication, nonstop, by mail. And our task right now is to present a slate of nominees for the pastor nominating committee. I promise not to use acronyms this morning. So the church nominating committee, my committee, is preparing a slate of candidates for the pastor nominating committee. And the congregation is going to approve that constituency, that membership of 5 members of the congregation and 1 alternate. Then the pastor nominating committee will eventually present their choice to the congregation. So you are an integral part of this whole workflow. So it's the congregation that finally then approves the decision that's presented by the pastor nominating committee. That's overbearing and dry as dust, but are there any questions? You must be an engineer too.
Yeah, what Ron just articulated so well, which is an important thing to emphasize, is that as a congregation, you get to choose your leaders. So we have committees that make recommendations. Here's our nomination for elders, deacons, and pastors. But you elect them. It's your choice, okay? There's not a bishop among us who says, that's your next pastor. What other questions do you have about that part of the process? The church nominating committee has been activated, and they've begun that work of Right. Once they are in agreement that they've got their 5+1, then the session will call a special congregational meeting, and then you will be presented with that slate. You can adapt it, adopt it, whatever you want to do. It's yours. And then the pastor nominating committee will then go to work, and then they'll eventually come back, another special congregational meeting, and present that candidate to you. Yeah. It can vary. Yeah, there's no book of order requirement, but there were 5 on Heather's plus an alternate, so we just thought that worked pretty well. They don't typically meet with unless someone needs to step out. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Don't want to rush this, but I also don't want to.
Will Presbytery send a representative like we had when we called you? Virgil was the representative.
Yeah, John L's question is, will there be a representative from the Presbytery? And the answer is yes. Whether that person sits consistently with the pastor nominating committee or not, I don't know. But we do have an official liaison who will be in communication. So once you elect the pastor nominating committee, the first step will be Cheryl, our executive presbyter, and that liaison will meet with the committee and do some orientation and some training, kind of say, this is your job, do it this way, don't do it that way, because we're Presbyterians. Okay, regarding, where's Walt? Walt's got this next little bit of detail that we want you to be aware of.
First of all, Lori, if you feel moved, you can volunteer for the PNC. I'm sure that they would be willing to have your input on that also. So the session has been talking about what next steps for about 6 months now. And in April, after receiving the Pastoral Discernment team's inputs, we voted to make a temporary position, 5 to 10 hours a week, called the lead pastoral parish associate. I'm sorry, parish associate. We also offered that job to Randy, and he has accepted. So in the meantime, between now and when we actually get a fulfillment from the PNC of our next halftime pastor, Randy will be leading the parish associates in organizing relief on the pulpit for Heather, also visitations that need to be done that one person might not be able to do, and also be preaching to us off and on. So we do have a plan for this interim period, so that will allow us to take our time to find the right person for the job that we're not moving too quickly for. Any questions? No questions?
That's a good plan. We have the resource, that makes it a good plan.
I think we've learned over the years that it's really hard to make a mistake if you are patient. You know, we typically get into trouble when we're rushing. So I think this feels good to the elders to have some, there's no hurry. There's no need to rush. The one other detail that didn't come up in our conversation so far that you may be interested to know is the question of whether this next halftime pastor is an associate pastor or a co-pastor. When we opened the process for my successor, it was really clear that we wanted to have a co-pastor because the intent was for that person to succeed me. In our polity, if an associate pastor is called, it requires a 2/3 vote, an affirmative vote of the presbytery for that person to step into the role as either a co-pastor or to become the pastor. So imagine the scenario in which Heather, for whatever reason, leaves. So that decision, does that make sense? So that decision has not been made yet. The session last Tuesday began talking about it, having a conversation about it, and we'll probably need to make that decision in June and give that directive to the pastor nominating committee. Are we looking for an associate pastor or a co-pastor, halftime in either case? So there are pros and cons to both. And if you have input, if you have some thoughts or wisdom about that, let one of the elders know. But they'll make that decision, I believe, next month. Okay?
Once they establish that it's an associate or a co, there's no way to move one way or the other. So if we call it an associate, it would become a co-pastor at a future date.
Once the person's installed, yes, but it requires a 2/3 vote of the presbytery for that to happen. Yeah.
And we also need to list it one way or the other. It needs to be listed and posted as an associate.
Can you use the mic, please?
Yeah, Randy's just simply saying that once that position is posted, it needs to be one or the other. That's why we need to make the decision. The session will make that decision presumably next month, so that when the position's posted, we're doing a national search, people know, is that an associate or is that a co-position? Rich? Yeah, I'm gonna have Randy speak to that because that was considered.
Yeah, so the question, Rich, you had was, have we considered a lay pastor? Someone like, I think Lisa Birdsall was sort of we called them commissioned ruling elders, yeah. We did talk about that, but we felt that it was important to have someone with who was ordained and had had seminary training, and we just felt that that was the best way to go. We did talk a lot about it, but felt that this was the best way to go at this time, yeah. Yeah, the parish associates are the ordained pastors in our midst who we recognize by the term parish associate. And we have about 6 or 8 of them. Some of them are in the room, and we're really... Can they be considered for the position? Sure. Sure.
Did you all in the back hear that question from Karen? Just, we have additional pastors beyond Presbyterians. They can't be parish associates because they're not part of our denomination. But we have 6 or 7 Presbyterian pastors who are either retired or serving in what we call at-large validated ministry. So Mindy Smith, who led the prayer confession, is a parish associate. Ordained Presbyterian, she serves as the director of the Office of Church Engagement over at Whitworth. And so I think the sort of the theoretical or hypothetical question was, could Mindy apply for this new position? And the answer is yes. All right, does that give you kind of a lay of the land where we are at this moment in our life together? Doesn't have to all be tidied up right here. So if you have some other questions that emerge, some of us think about things at 2 o'clock in the morning. If something comes to mind, just ask Randy or Ron or one of the other elders. Okay, and by the way, I've encouraged this process to begin sooner than later. It doesn't feel at all dishonoring for you to be thinking about the next step while I'm still here, okay? All right, it's not an official congregational meeting, so we're not required to close in prayer, but I'm going to anyway. God, we do bring to you our trust in you. We keep looking to you. You're not just the author and perfecter of our faith. You're the originator and the redactor, the editor of our stories, our life together. So we just continue to turn our attention to you and resolve in our commitment to trust you, seeking earnestly the direction of your Spirit for this new phase of life and ministry. We believe you. We believe in you, and we will proceed in faith, looking forward to the day when we look back on this moment and say, see how God has worked, see how good God is. Thank you for this day, for what's remaining and what's ahead. We pray that you'll keep us mindful of your presence and the deep love that you have for each one of us. We pray all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you, friends.